Hey everyone, welcome to my talk for So You Cracked a Bunch of Passwords, Now What? My name is Chris Timmons. I'm presenting for BSides Vancouver 2021, and I figured the hockey intermission music might be a little comforting for those of us in Calgary and Vancouver who probably aren't going to see a hockey playoff game for the next little while. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I am Chris Timmons. I am the IT security specialist team lead at Ion United. Go by the Twitter handle Broken Data. I've been a pen tester and a security architect for about 27 years now. I've had senior roles at various companies. I've been a speaker at conferences, subject matter expert on a lot of different, really various things. I even made the cover of CIO Canada way back in March 2012. My God, 9 years. And according to my loving wife, my basement workshop can probably act as a NASA disaster recovery location, although I should probably update that reference to SpaceX lately. So a little more about me. I've helped secure a bunch of companies you've heard of and a ton you probably will never, ever hear of. And I've done a little bit of everything else: password cracking, hardware hacking, wireless, smartphone, forensics. I even get to play with cool little robots like Pepper there. I mean, I used to take DVD players and hack them and give them away as Christmas presents back in 2005. It's pretty bad when you can go into a Walmart and read the serial number and know what chip was inside of it. Why did I do these kind of things? Well, I like shiny things. I'm a chronic procrastinator, and I like to build once and use many. So a lot of the times you end up needing a tool, doing something, you figure something out, you save the code snippet, you do it again later on, because if it takes you 5 minutes to do it once, and then it takes 30 seconds the next time, well, it just gives me time to go play with another shiny toy. And the other thing is, well, I like cracking passwords. I've got a pretty decent GPU rig in my basement, part of the NASA center. And, you know, I'm cracking on an NTLM hash. I'm getting about 160 gigahashes per second, which is 160 billion passwords per second. So I've got a large collection of breach data and passwords and dictionaries, and I sit there and crunch them around all day. And what does that really mean? When I tell people I crack passwords for a living, they don't really understand the concept of, taking an Active Directory database and sitting there and cracking the passwords and getting the passwords and being able to get the password history that they used to have. When a lot of people have never seen this kind of thing, so when we've done these kind of exercises for our clients, it's really interesting for them to see not only the technology behind it with GPU crackers and dictionaries and password breaches and everything else, but also really to understand what is the real output from it. What do they really get from it? And I have to admit, COVID has thrown an interesting mix into that. Everyone's working from home now. I actually was pretty lucky. I worked exclusively from home before. Randomly went into clients' offices for presentations and such, but for the most time, I'm wearing a hoodie or a pair of shorts and hit the treadmill and go up and then go back to work. The only real difference with COVID was there was a lot more people in my house during the day, but interestingly enough, a lot of the pen testing is done at night, so it really didn't make that much of a difference. So what do companies pen test? Well, most of the time it boils down to a few things. They need shock and awe. The entire security team knows that there's problems, and they need an independent third-party consulting company to tell them exactly what they need to do so that they can get the budget to go do it. And certain times it's a compliance, it's a checkbox. They need a pen test done because they're PCI compliant or ASV or whatever the case may be. A lot of the times it's for testing specific things. They need to find out, we implemented a large change. We need to verify that it's good. We're implementing a new product or a new system. Or they're testing a previous pen test and they said, okay, we fixed everything. Is there a new hole or are we good now? And of course, it's understanding that it's a continual thing. It's a maturity. It's a process. And just because you weren't exploitable or vulnerable to something last year doesn't mean that you are this year, because, well, new hacks and stuff come out all the time. And some of the more mature clients that we have, they're looking at things like purple teaming, where, they're actively red and blue, trying to make sure that the defenses are improved, or really getting into true adversarial simulation. Take a look at things like the pipeline going on right now and saying, what happens if malware comes in? What if there's a threat actor were to come in? Let's test that defense and see what it really means. So what do pen testers really do? Well, according to SANS, it's a lot. But I'm not going to talk about everything on that one today. What I am going to talk about is this. I'm not going to talk about all the things that pen testers do. I'm here to talk about one thing, reporting. Reporting is absolutely paramount to any kind of pen testing, whether you're doing web app testing, network penetration testing, password spraying, Office 365, operational OT environments. No matter what happens, reporting is paramount because it is what shows your work. And unless you can show your work, you can't show your client what they're vulnerable to, and you can't show them how to fix it. And that's the reason that we're pen testing, is to do that. And what do customers really want? Well, your customer is the executive. They are the management and the leadership team of the organization that you are doing the testing for. They don't care about your elite hacker skills. They don't care that you found some really cool exploit or wrote some POC that, popped a remote procedure call and ended up getting you, a remote code execution on a system. They don't care. They really care what's the impact and the risk to their organization and how to fix it. For certain organizations that are very mature, they may be understanding, but understand if a customer has never had a pen test before, they're not going to know what to expect. So you have to deliver your reporting to that company's maturity level. Some are going to be expecting, if they have quarterly pen tests happen, they're used to it. They have a compliance program. They have remediation programs in place. Sometimes this is the first time they have to do. So you have to lead them through it, and you have to be gentle. Right? You need to identify what the root cause is. You have to identify the cost and the effort. And the effort is not necessarily, it's not the same for every customer, because some organizations are going to have certain technology or processes or policies in place which make it easier to remediate those findings. And there's costs. Sometimes it's a zero cost because it's just a policy that they need to implement. But there's always a cost, even if it's not technology dollars, it's a human capital. People have to go and do things. And if you have to take them off another project to do this, there's that cost. But it needs to be specific, it needs to be defined, and it has to be actionable. And it has to speak in their language. If they're using NIST, we'll call out the NIST reference in your remediation report. If they're using the CIS-20, call that out. You have to map to their framework so that when they go back and they report to their risk compliance management committee, they know exactly, and you're speaking their language, and they can slap it into their risk register and move on. A good example of this is reporting. Take a look at this report structure. We've got table of contents, executive summaries, identified risks, all of the methodology that you use so that you can walk through. But the technical detail, the really cool, shiny stuff, that's going to go down in one of the appendices. And that's where the details is, because what's going to happen is executive looks at the executive summary, management looks at the next section, but the technical people go here. Looking at the executive summary, you should be listing out what was the objectives. When you scope out a pen test, you're going to identify what are the crown jewels, right? What was the result? Did you get them? Did you not? Were there certain things that prevented you from doing it, or certain issues that you found that enabled you to do it? Identify those. Identify what the risk is to the business. Identify 3 key findings that you had and tell management how they can do that. If you have a bad password policy, tell them implement a better password policy. Seems pretty straightforward, but some people miss that basic step. Identify from an executive level, put a pretty chart in, and say just how many issues that they have, something that they can flip around, copy and paste into a board report, and keep moving on. When you get into the risk summary, think of one step down from the executives. These are the managers. These are the people who probably hired you for the engagement. Assume this is all that they're going to read. Put in your observation. What's the implication of the impact or the risk to that organization? Put in a shortened recommendation. We don't need 50,000 lines of technical details. They just want a summary. For example, here we have privileged service accounts in Active Directory. People who curb roast find bad passwords all the time. Number of engagements. I've been on. We curb roasted the environment, and we found a domain admin service account, and the password was password. Happens all the time, right? Key recommendation: make sure they have long, randomly generated passwords. If the password policy allows users or the password to be easily guessed because it's winter 21 again, or winter 20, winter 21, got to go for the historical analysis. tell them, length is better than complexity. Require them to be longer and change less frequently, and get them out of that seasonal rotation. And then detail out in the methodology. Detail every step you took. Somebody else, another pen tester, should be able to pick up your results and go step by step. You may not be the people running the remediation test last year, but a pen tester may ask for previous pen test reports to validate. And you should be able to take that previous pen test report, open up the tool of choice at the time for whatever pen tester did, plug in the exact same thing, and verify 100% or not, is this a real issue or has it been fixed? Tell the story of how you got it fixed. Look at, when you're going through step by step, it should say, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. Plot the map, A, B, C. And then finally, you get to the juicy stuff, the detailed findings. This is the section for put all the technical details, pile it on, make it complete, make it actionable, stick to the facts, say exactly what you did, what you didn't do, put in recommendations, actionable steps, check this box, make this change a default password, and make references. Put as links to everything you can find. Microsoft articles, knowledge base articles, blog posts, anything you can find that's referencing this, that gives them more context and proves that you're not making it up. Why? Because the rest of the internet agrees that this is a problem, and it gives them a lot more references on not only how to exploit it, but more importantly, how to fix it. Now you're probably saying, well, I thought we were here to talk about passwords. And we are. Like I said, if you're doing any kind of penetration testing or any kind of testing at all, you have to be able to report on it. Great, I can crack 160 billion NTLM passwords a second. What is that really going to mean when I try and report on it? Well, taking a look at some of the current tool sets that we've got today. A lot of people running Hashcat, for example, are going to be very familiar with PAC. It's Password Analysis and Cracking Kit. It's not really made for reporting. It helps you generate password masking rules to help you be more efficient for cracking. So you run through it, takes a look at the results, generates some pretty basic statistics, but helps you generate rules so that you can then run more password cracks. Works really good. I've taken some of this output over the years and used it in certain things, but typically I end up taking it and then trying to, format it into Word or dump it into an Excel CSV table and make a pretty picture out of it. Domain Password Audit Tool, DPad. Fantastic tool. Carrie wrote a great one. Black Hills supported on it. Fantastic. And I stole some of the sample data completely shamelessly because it was great. Spent a lot of time on it. It's a fantastic tool, and it generates a lot of statistics. It identifies, people have been piling on a number of different add-ons to it over the years, being able to generate output roles from things like PowerView and everything else, and take those and feed them in so that you can say who's a member of the domain admins, enterprise admins, right? Really putting context in, not saying, hey, it's just a username and a password that I've cracked. Oh crap, that was the domain admin's account. Yes. Right? And it's great. It's an HTML report. It's got clickable links, copy and paste into another report. It's really good. But I find the same thing, sometimes you're wanting more. And it's in Python 2.7. It does run on 3, but that's probably going to break at some point. Funny enough, having the password cracking boxes means that some of the other guys who doesn't have quite the horsepower want access to it. So I started looking through some of the web GUI stuff just for multiple job submissions, because if you ever try and put on 2 screen sessions and multiple cracking sessions on the same box, people really don't like it. You can use things like Hash Octopus and stuff like that, but it's a bit of setup. So I was looking for some click and go stuff for some of the guys, and things like Webhashcat. Not really good for queuing, but really good for being able to set up distributed sessions. Great, some good graphical statistics on that one, but they're minimal, right? And it doesn't really say about anything about the users. It just lets you kind of do your thing, but you can upload plain text files into it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Another one I found was Wavecrack. User-friendly, yeah. It's mostly exactly as indicated for sharing a Hashcat box with multiple users. It keeps each user's information totally separate. Problem is the statistics that it provides are pretty minimal. And it's same thing, no relation to any of the users. It's pretty basic. It's not its primary function. HashView is another one that I ran across, and this is probably the one I'm going to start looking at a little bit more. So it separates and it has web application that runs Hashcat in the background, allows for multi-session management, job queuing, and even so much as when you're doing password cracking runs, you can tell it to do this and then do this and then do this instead of having to manually remember that, I ran the dead rule this time and next time I want to run this dictionary with this rule. It's pretty great. Good graphical statistics. You can include base words. So if you scraped a website with cool, you can feed those in and find out, how many passwords were generated related to the company. But the statistics I find are a little bit lacking. It's not its primary use, but interesting nonetheless. It does mention users because it, will say total unique users, but not quite as much. I had to laugh though at this one because this is a copy and paste right from their webpage and stuff, and consistency was spelled wrong. I had to laugh. So SIC. So comparison. Well, taking a look at all the different tools, some are made for one thing, some are made for another. We got a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and like most tools, right? Pick the right tool for the right job. If you're running for base statistics and you're going to be copying them out and you just need some HTML, Excel tables, DPad's great. For some of the stuff, it might just be exactly what you need because you're not needing to provide reports for executives. Looking at it though, if you were to take all these tools, roll them into one, you want great statistics, you want graphics, you want to be able to separate Landman and NTLM hashes, because the number of times I've pulled a password database for a client and said, hey, you still got Landman hashes for service accounts that you built 10 years ago, because they didn't realize that a Windows Server 2003, if you upgrade it, it actually keeps Landman enabled. And there's actually a registry key, you can actually turn it on, back on later. So it's kind of fun that way. But things like password history, base words, flexible output, really generating some of the statistics, and DPad's the only one that actually did the history as well, where you can say, here's the pattern, spring 18, spring or summer 19, winter 20, and it keeps going on like that. Some of the tools are very specific around Hashcat as well. If we were to have a new tool, I'd say, hey, what about using masks and rules? If you crack passwords and you're seeing patterns where it's not typically like uppercase, lowercase, 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 digit, special, like June 2021. Maybe they've got a 14-character password policy, and they've got their own little thing, and people call it company 123 password ABC. You'll never know. But what about being able to generate your own statistics and then generate a report on that? You can do that with Hashcat and some pot file stuff right now, but it's all bash trickery, and well, if we can make it automated, why not? Interestingly enough, I haven't seen a single password reporting tool written in PowerShell. So I wrote one. Introducing Perp. Perp is the Password Excellent Reporting PowerShell. It's a tool for extracting information from John and Hashcat pot files and generating an Excel workbook with pivot tables and everything else to analyze the passwords that you've cracked and looking for those deep statistics. And I've tried to include everything that I thought was missing in all the other tools. So great statistics, very similar to DPad. Total hashes, unique, cracked, not cracked, landmans, how many of them were unique, how many come from just standard English dictionaries, derived from customer.com, so using tools like Cool, for example. How many passwords have a variation of the customer's name? How many contain a variation of password? How many are in common cracking dictionaries? So RockU, breach compilation, take your pick. How many of them are reused? How many contain a name of the season, special characters, uppercase, all those fun things. Even started looking into trying to integrate it into Have I Been Owned, for example, because we can actually check and see if those passwords have been breached. Why not? As I mentioned about the graphics, obviously that's one of the things that was driving it. So we've got all of the things that were in the previous table into a chart. Obviously these numbers are really off, but they do show a few things. Here's a better example of actually some of those, the dashboards. So not only just the standard patterns, but also some of the more intricate patterns. So things like having those pattern masks of uppercase, lowercase. What are the 10 most common passwords? What's the variation of passwords cracked versus not cracked? Same thing, we also wanted to be able to pull out Landman hashes. Why? It's a risk to customers. If you've got passwords that are stored in Landman hash, it doesn't matter how good the password was. A bad guy, if they have your Active Directory database, is going to pull out those Landman hashes, crack the password seconds. It doesn't matter if the service account had 20-character complex random passwords. If it's a domain admin and it's got a Landman hash, it's pretty much done. Same thing, looking at relative to users' roles. This one only shows it being an administrator account, but anything can be done. You can look for members of specific groups, a privileged group. Maybe you're looking for your business objective was financial controls, and you managed to crack the passwords of all the accounting that have access to the sensitive accounting files. Password history. This is an extremely important thing because when you take a look at the password history, you can find out beyond just the winter 2020 kind of things, what kind of patterns are really showing up within the report, and being able to show on them year over year or quarter over quarter, and being able to see what the effectiveness of any of the controls. So if they implemented a 20-character password policy last month, and then here's all the passwords they used to crack, and now on this run you can't crack any, that's a positive remediation. Same thing, just talking about some of the base words again, pretty much anything can be done. And the statistics you drive from this can be literally just driven by what files that you input as base words, whether it's scraping the website or name of special products or whatever the case may be, you can analyze it. And of course, the big thing was reporting. Being able to generate an Excel workbook with pivot tables is great. But we can also take it, because it's PowerShell, and export all of those Excel pivot tables to HTML. We can also even export all the CSV. So you take the pot files in, and let's say you want to export all the passwords to CSV. Hit the button. I am working on a sanitize function on it as well. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to always release all the passwords, so I'm working on that as a feature as well. And of course, we want to be able to say, we support any password cracking tool, and honestly, the output files from John and Hashcat are minimal at best. Literally, John just puts in like an LM flag, and that's it. So being able to support both as an input-output just makes it more tool agnostic. And I mentioned about masks. Well, as a bonus, Hashcat comes with a bunch of built-in masks. So the 8-character rule, standard Windows complexity. You can run reports and say how many of the passwords you cracked actually meet that. But what if you generate a bunch of statistics with PAC? Well, fine, upload those and you can report on those too. And as I mentioned, it's PowerShell. I hadn't found a single tool written in PowerShell, so why not? I am trying to be cross-platform. Obviously, you can run PowerShell on Kali and stuff now, so why not? Haven't run into any showstoppers yet on that one, but we'll find out. And of course, I thought about just adding on or rewriting and forking DPad and adding that in. I decided to roll my own, so yeah. But at some point, I may decide to write my own Python version. Who knows? We'll see. You know what? These are just what I've thought of. I'm sure you guys have a lot of suggestions, comments, and I'd love to hear them. Let me know in the QA. We'll hit you up on the Discord. I'd love to hear the feedback. I mean, if it's a feature that you need, let's add it. Rolling it back, we talked about reporting. So how does Perp help drive the reporting? Well, how do you improve password policy? You have to prove that it is, right? Audiences management. They don't care about how you cracked a 20-character password. They care if a domain admin service account was using password. That usually actually gets fixed pretty quick. Same thing, delivering to the customer maturity level. Is this your first pen test? I can guarantee the first time I ever cracked a password database for a customer, we have clients who give us their Active Directory database every year, and we perform this assessment and we provide these analytics for them so they can see those year-over-year improvements and, flushing out Landman passwords and everything else. The first time they ever got the report, it was an eye-opener. Second, third, fourth time they got it, it's pretty standardized at this point, and they're able to hone in and fix on those. But customers I've done where they've never been pen tested before, we got in, we stole the database, and we run some analytics on it for them. It's a little eye-opening, right? So they don't really understand what the danger is on some of this stuff, so you have to just prove it, and that's what the reporting is for. But also take a look at some of the risk. Does the client have MFA enforcement? Is it used everywhere? Do they have a hole? Are they using passwords over and over? Are they using passwords that have been put out in breach data? Are they using the same password on external website logins and stuff? What are the dangers on that? And you know what? You take a look at all of this, and the root cause is usually bad password policies. Who hasn't remembered the standard one? It's got to be Windows complexity, 8 characters, 3 out of 4 rule. Change it every 90 days. Well, that just makes people want to do spring, summer, winter, fall. Talking about things like cost and effort. Instituting a new password policy doesn't cost anybody anything. It's a piece of paper. Implementing the password policy could be huge because you have to change service accounts. There could be dependencies. You could be running an old ancient system that doesn't support system characters beyond 6-character passwords. Been there, done that. It sucks. Be specific about the actions that they need to take. Where is the risk? Yes, they may have LAN manager or Landman hashes in their password database, but if they're using Privilege X workstations and they're doing all the right things, the risk isn't as great because for somebody to get to the domain controller, they have to pop MFA on an admin and do all these other things. So take that into context. And at the same time, I mentioned before, speak their language, map to their framework. If using things like ISM and stuff, they have password complexity requirement rules. You can generate reports with things like, AD Recon or any other tool to actually show exactly what the mapping is, and so their password policy doesn't meet, the PCI compliance requirements. So therefore, you guys have to fix this, or you're no longer PCI compliant, and they have to file an exception, and nobody likes doing that. So as I mentioned, the tool's being released on my GitHub. Please go take a look. Some features are still being worked on, but it's going to be in active development for the next little while. Let's chat it up in the QA and see what's going on. Thank you everyone for attending, and talk to you soon.